recording. You see, this is why I have some kind of memory, a little reminder on my screen, or tie a string on my finger, something to remind me to hit the
Even when I
record.
put the reminder on the screen, I still, I forgot it. Like, oh,
It's
please.
not easy, I tell you. Look at that. I almost forgot. Well, now I think I'm recording, right? I think I am recording now. Yes. Yes. The button turned red over here. Good.
Okay.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was saying, I'm back. I'm happy to see everyone. And first workshop since 2 weeks ago, more than 2 weeks. And so we're continuing our talk on flipped classroom. And this, short presentation. I have about 12 slides, and I have 5 activities at the end I'm going to share with everyone. But before I jump into the activities, I want to talk a little bit, recap what we spoke. I don't know if you attended the workshop Jeffrey and I did on flipped classroom a few weeks ago, or more, maybe a month ago. And if you haven't, that recording is available, and I have it linked at the end of my slides. But I also want to share my slides with you all, so that if you want to follow along, you have these slides. You can follow along, or you can just have the slides. I'm going to put the slides in the chat, so you can just easily click on that link, and it's right there in the chat. In the chat room, you'll see the little bubble, the comment bubble. If you click on the comment bubble, you'll get into the chat room, and then you can click on this link right here, and it will take you into the slides. If anyone has trouble accessing the slides, please let me know. I'm seeing the name, people clicking on it, so I think it's working. And so
I love the first one. It flipped. That's adorable.
Oh, you like the, Patricia, I learned from you, Patricia. You have a lot of visuals in your so you got to put some visuals in there, right, to get the.
It's very cute. It really. Can I take that from you?
Of course. Hey, I borrowed it from someone else. So, so a quick recap. What is a flipped classroom? And Jeffrey, like I mentioned before, Jeffrey and I did a whole workshop on this already. Feel free to watch the full workshop. It's about an hour. Jeffrey and I go into deep details on what is a flipped classroom and some activities and some strategies. But real quick, and a short summary of what a flipped classroom is. It basically, instead of doing your lectures in the face-to-face class, what you do is you assign the students videos that they watch on their own time. And you're going to hear that term a lot today, on your own time. It's also similar to asynchronous, right? So on your own time means that the students will watch these videos asynchronously whenever they have the time, at home, on the bus ride, at work, or wherever, on the commute. And so it's much more flexible, so that students can grab their cell phone, the smartphone, click on the link, put their headphones on, and they watch your lecture, right, before they come to class. And so now what that does is it frees up the time in the classroom time for you to do other things, right? And so now that the students have watched the videos, now you can have more interaction with the class. You can focus more time for one-on-one with students who are struggling. And it doesn't mean that you don't lecture. You could do micro lectures, right? These are short recap of important points from that lecture, right? So that's really, in a nutshell, what a flipped classroom model is. And so now that we're returning back into the face-to-face classroom, a lot of faculty have a lot of videos that were recorded during the remote teaching. And so, I've gotten a lot of questions from faculty. Hey, Jose, what can I do now? I have all these videos that were recorded. Can I use them? And I say to them, well, this is a perfect opportunity to flip your classroom. And, you can use these videos, assign them as homework, have the students watch them at their own time. They come back to the classroom, frees up your time to do a lot more interactive, fun stuff, you know, and also target those students who are falling behind. You can give them one-on-one time. And the purpose of our workshop today is to give you some ideas. Now that you have freed up this time, you're asking yourself, oh my gosh, I have 2 hours or 3 hours to fill up. What do I do? And so this workshop today is I'm going to share some ideas, some activities that you can do in the face-to-face classroom now that you have freed up that time. Any questions about what is a flipped classroom?
Can I also just add, Jose, a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
So the reason our office is doing this workshop now, whereas the CET usually covers flipped classroom as part of regular face-to-face teaching options. We're not usually in the business of getting into the face-to-face courses, but at the beginning of the summer, the college really didn't know how many students would be missing class due to visa issues. We heard about visa backlogs and accommodations that students may have. So we wanted to give faculty the tools to be able to make sure the lecture experience was getting to all students in the same way, regardless of their situation. So I don't know if you are personally thinking about what students might have issues, or maybe none of you are going to have any issues at all this fall, which is great. But this sort of levels the playing field. If you do adopt flipped, which is a great strategy in itself, it levels the playing field so that at least all students, no matter where they are going to get that same lecture experience. And then, they can interact with the other students at a distance or however it needs to happen. But we thought that this might be a good strategy for those of you in that boat too. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Tammy. Yeah. And so here's a graphic of a visual of what a flipped classroom could look like. So before the classroom, students prepare to participate in class activities. This is similar to what you would do if you were to assign homework to your students, right? And so this is before the class starts. And with homeworks, all teachers have to, face the issue of, hey, student didn't do his or her homework, right? And so the same will apply to the flipped classroom if the student doesn't watch the video. And I'll get to that in a second in the next few slides on accountability, right? So that's another issue here of, has a student watched, has a student done the work, and then what do you do to make sure that your students are doing their homework or watching their videos? And then during the class, this is basically what we're going to talk a lot about today is what are some things that you can do and some ideas, strategies for the in the class time. And then at the end, after the class, students check their understanding and expand their learning, right? And so they can always go back, rewatch the videos, put together what they learned from the video, then what they learned in the class, and then do reflect on what they learned. So this basically, in a nutshell, is the flipped classroom model, right? And so it combines outside the classroom, in the classroom, and then back, once students leave the classroom. It's a continuous process. As you see, this linear line going from left to right. And within this linear line, you have your learning objectives. And so on the first day of class, it's very important to explain the rules of the game to the students. The flipped classroom model has gained a lot of momentum in the past few years, but it might be that some of your students might have never experienced the flipped classroom model. So it's very important for you to outline those rules on day one on what is going to happen. It's very important that they watch the videos. You got to stress that. I also would recommend attaching grade value, weighted points towards the watching of the videos, or assigning assessments that after watching the video, if you assign a quiz or some type of activity attached to watching the video, because we're going to talk about accountability, right? If there are no points attached to watching the videos, then most likely students are not going to do it. You know, the first thing students do when they open your syllabus is they look at the breakdown of the grades. You know, what many points you're giving to this, how many points. So they're already looking at that and they're already strategizing what is important for them to do within the class. And so when we talk about accountability, we got to hold students accountable, because you don't want them coming to class and they have not watched the video, and then they, you know, if you're doing a discussion in the class, they can't add any value to the discussion if they haven't watched your lecture videos. So it's very important on day one to go through all these rules and explain to them exactly how the class is going to work if you are going to adopt the flipped classroom model. Now, if you go with the flipped classroom model, you don't have, it's not necessarily to do the whole, you know, the whole semester as a flipped classroom model. You can even flip a unit. You know, you can go to, you know, if this is your first time trying out the flipped classroom model, you can go as small as a unit or just a learning objective and just do that, and then, you know, go back to normal things if you just want to test out the flipped classroom model. And so we talked about on your own time, and on your own time is when the students now are outside the classroom. This is the time that they have on their own, and this is asynchronous, right? This is outside the classroom. This might happen at any time, from the time that they left the classroom until the next time we meet in the classroom. So that's what's on your own means. It's from the time they left your classroom until they come back to your classroom. And so in between that time, they have to do whatever the assignment is that you assigned for them, including watching that lecture video that you prepared for them. In the class time, Patricia, you have a question?
Just a comment, if it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
The last time we discussed the flip part, I was like, I didn't know if it was right to give them even extra assignments having done these, but this last semester I did my Voices of Civil Rights in remote, and it was, I have been doing it flipped, is that they have to do everything or watch many of these videos and all the rest of it, and what I had them do was do a commentary of you know, a contrast and compare what was different about this and what would you, so that, and I told them at the beginning that way that if you are if somebody is very open and very verbal, that's great, but if you're somebody who is a little bit more reticent, that's fine for me, even if you just read that to us, and then we can use that as a springboard for our discussion as well. So the discussions wound up being extremely interactive, and even the people that were very shy, and one girl actually did read hers, and that was fine, because then it was, oh yeah, you know, I like this about your comments and so forth and so on. And so yeah, it is more things that they have to do and are graded. So I didn't like that too much, but they didn't like that too much. But you know, but at least it held them accountable. So coming to the discussion, they had something to say of worth. You know.
Yeah, you bring up two really important things I want to touch on, and one of them is everyone has a fair share, an attempt, right? It's everyone has you know, you don't have the same students, or those students who are shy or scared or are still practicing, you know, how to speak in front of an audience. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I have one activity I want to share with you, and I wanted to ask you, Patricia, when I get to that point, have you, you know, I want to share some of those ideas with you, and especially in your class, because you teach speech, and so when I get to that point, I want to share that with you and hear your opinion. The second thing you bring up too, which I think is important, is grading. And as we all know, we just came out of the remote teaching. And I was reading an article the other day about cheating and how cheating has, you know, has become so rampant in the online world, and not only online, but also this this past few months on remote teaching. And how do we tackle cheating, right? And
Yeah.
and this forces us to rethink our assignments, right? And how do we create assignments now that I can easily go to, what is it? There's a website. There's a couple of websites. There's one called Jedi Paper or something where you pay, yeah, there's a couple of them, and then you pay students from Nigeria, Kenya. A lot of them are from Kenya, and you pay 30, 50, 80 bucks, and the students get a paper written for them, and so that's another thing. And so cheating is a big deal, and so these activities that we're going to talk about today, when you will assign these on your own assignments that they would do at their home or wherever, and watch the videos, and they bring it back to class. Now, it's a type of assignment that we have to think about also the cheating part. If the student doesn't know what they've written on that paper, you have to have them talk about, like you're saying, a discussion, this critical thinking, peer-to-peer assignments, think, pair, share. So these are some of the activities that now that instead of doing a quiz, which they can have anybody can do it for them and cheat, now they actually have to come into the classroom in a flipped classroom model and explain, hey, I really know this. And these are authentic assessment types, where these are authentic responses. These aren't students cheating or getting the answers from somewhere else. They have to stand in front of the classroom, just like in your class, Patricia, where you have them speak in front of the class and show that they know what they're talking about. And so that's class time, but also the other key point is bridging the two. Now, it's fine for you to assign homeworks and videos to students and then forget about them and then not bring them over in the classroom. But that's not really the point of all this. The point is really bridging the two. You don't just want to assign and forget. And so this is what brings us to that point of, how do I have students watch the videos, do the assignments, and then bring that assignment back into the classroom? And now that we've freed up the time from lectures, how can I use that time so students can actually now either, you can pair them up, do discussion, just like Patricia was just saying, and use up that time in ways that students can show what they've learned from watching the videos and add value to the conversation in the classroom. But that's what I mean by bridging the two, bridging what they did on your own time, and then bringing that on your own time and bringing that into the classroom. And that's what I mean by bridging the two. And then we talked about accountability, right? This really can break your whole flipped classroom model. If you don't explain the rules to the students and they figure out, hey, well, I'm not getting graded for watching the videos and doing the assignments on my own time, and then they say, well, teacher's not watching me or not grading this stuff, then what's the point of me doing this on my own? And then when you come to the class and you hear a crickets because nobody did the work, and that will, right away, you'll know that would break the flipped classroom model, right? Once you start seeing students are not coming to the class prepared, not adding value to the conversation, then you have a problem, and that's the accountability problem. And so that's where, like I said before, it's the first thing students go to in the syllabus is the grade breakdown. So, assigning a value to participation, assigning a value to the homework assignments, attaching an assignment to the videos, and we're going to talk about in a few seconds, how can I attach an assignment to that video that they just watched? So accountability is huge when you're talking about the flipped classroom model. All right, so here's some examples. The first example that I want to show, and this, Patricia, I think will connect, I don't know if you used this before in your classroom, but it's called the Snowball Game. And basically what happens is, you assign the video lecture, they watch it, and it could be, you ask them to write a short paper or answer some questions on a sensitive topic. It could be anything from, sexism, ageism, or something that could be sensitive to the students. and they might be shy or afraid to talk about that in the class because they might have personal stories, right, from your students. And so what the snowball game does is once you have your students in your classroom, they bring their papers with them in the classroom. And then you ask them you have everybody stand up in the classroom and you tell them, okay, pull up your paper, and then you tell them to crumble it into a snowball. So you have all your students crumbling up their paper that they worked on so hard and turning it into a snowball. Then what you do next, this might be shocking to your student, but you say, hey, we're going to have a snowball fight. And then you have them toss the snowballs at each other. You know, you don't tell them don't hit each other in the face. You know, you don't want nobody getting hurt. But it's a fun activity, which what happens is the tension, the fear, the anxiety of having to speak up in the class, it sheds away that fear because of a snowball game that you're having. And so for that moment in time, all that fear and anxiety goes away. Now, the next step, what you do is you tell your students, okay, now pick up a snowball from the floor, and most likely you're going to be picking up someone else's paper, right? And so now you're going to go across the room asking students to read someone else's paper. Most likely you're going to have someone else's paper. I mean, odds, depending on how many students in your class. But you see what this is going with, right? You're handling something sensitive. Patricia, you in your class, I know you handle a lot of sensitive topics, political topics and so forth. And as you mentioned before, you have students who are, not English first speakers, and so you might have anxiety, fear of speaking in the classroom. And this activity might be a nice one to get the ball rolling, also as an icebreaker, right? You might have students write about themselves. What are some important things that they like to do? What are your hobbies? And then turn that into a snowball and have them throw it at each other, and then you pick up randomly a snowball from the floor, and then you read it in the room. You go across the room. Any questions about the first activity, or Patricia, you want to add to that?
Oh wow! I was just going to write you something in the chat because I didn't want to interrupt you. But yeah, that's a great idea. You know what I do is even when we talk about the first unit is about what are civil rights, and what I have them do is watch this video that a teacher has. Everybody they're seated in 3 rows, and the idea is that we have but you roll up the papers, and then the first row, second row, and third row, everybody tries to get it into the trash can, and of course the people in the first row have an advantage, and the second row maybe not as much, and the third row is saying, excuse me. I said, well, if you can't get it into the paper, then you're going to get an F for this assignment. Well, do you think that that's fair? So that's so funny. That's a really nice idea. I'm going to try to do it with my public speaking. Maybe in the first one, what I had them do is choose somebody who, for whatever reason, they might consider their opposite, and go across the room and actually connect with them, and then they have 3 main points to discuss. But that would be kind of fun. Is that here's your put your 3 main points on there, roll up the piece of paper, and then do snowballs. It's an interesting idea. I'm going to try it.
Yeah. Now remember, the key is to connect the assignment to the video lecture that they're supposed to watch, so that when they come to the class, remember we talked about bridging the on your own work and then bringing that into the classroom. Anyone else wants to add something that's similar to the snowball game before I move on to the second activity?
Jose, Shayna had her hand up, and I think she wrote her question. I'm not sure. Shayna, did you want to ask a question or just?
Yeah, I wrote it. Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering. Okay, so you just addressed how it might be graded. So are they writing their names on it? Does the whole class know whose snowball is being read? Then do you collect all of the snowballs and grade those individually? That's all I was.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now, yeah, that's a great point, Sheena. I mean, now you can go many directions with this, right? I mean, you can have students' names, or keep it anonymous, or or you have the students, in a Google Doc, or email you write which paper was mine, or you can go many directions with this. And the point of these activities is to keep them as open as possible so that we can fit them and you can mold them into whatever you want them to be. And so that's the key point.
All right. I'm sorry. Can I just ask one sort of unrelated question, maybe? Can we expect everyone in class to have access to the internet during class now, or not?
So that's another important point I think I forgot to cover. So if with the flipped classroom model, I highly recommend on day one, and I forgot to say this, and thank you for reminding me, is that you do have to survey your students on, do you have a laptop? Do you have access to a computer? Do you have access to the internet? Right? Crucial, because it's having access to the videos, having access to Blackboard is crucial, right? And for an online student, that's all, it's already stated. Students already know that they have to have a computer. But now if you're talking about in a face-to-face classroom, right, this is something that, Tammy, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this, but I would recommend surveying your students in the class before, right, and asking who, right?
I know some faculty are asking students to, make sure that they can access on their phones or their laptop, just kind of polling the students to see who can connect to the Wi-Fi from the classroom. And of course, there will be some, definitely there'll be some classes happening in a computer room. If I could just share my own example from, I taught social media for Northeastern University, and this is when social media was quite new. And I found myself making videos the students could watch in Blackboard covering all the different tools available in social media. So I gave the tour of Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn in my video lecture, and then they came to class ready to create accounts and post and have group discussions on the pros and cons of social media. So students, again, like Jose was saying, knew that they had to come to class prepared or they would really get left behind. So if that course were taught at FIT, I would probably say, well, everyone's got to either bring a laptop or a phone that they could be working on social media in the classroom, and let me know if that's a problem. But yeah, it's tricky when you don't know what classroom you're in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It sounds like a great course for FIT.
I think someone was teaching social media, because I taught that
social media class.
Yeah.
There is such a class in AMC. But ITM is also going through the approval process of having social media in international trade.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, if anyone tries out the Snowball game in their class, please come back and let me know how that went. The second thing I wanted to bring up in activity is, and this is a common one, and I'm not sure. I just wanted to bring it up because I thought someone might not ever heard of the think, pair, share, right? So basically, think, pair, share is a collaborative learning strategy where students work together to solve a problem or answer a question about an assigned reading or video lecture. And so what you do is, the students are gonna watch your videos on their own time. You come back to the classroom and you pair them up with someone else, right? So now they're in pairs. And so now you have those two students talk amongst themselves, right? You talk and they talk, and again, like I mentioned to Sheena, these are all very generic, so you can mold them into whatever it is that you want them to be. So, for example, if you have them, if you have several questions you want them to answer based on the video that they just watched, students will group together in pairs, talk about their answers, and then as they're working together in groups, then you go around the room, and you might have one person from the group talk about, hey, maybe I changed my answer, I learned this or that, from each other. And so it's more of a collaborative, social type learning among students. So that's think, pair, share, and that's an easy one to do in the classroom. I'm sure most people here have done that one. But similar to think, pair, share is the peer assessment. And so the peer assessments is, and this might work more at FIT because we have a lot of students producing content, right? Whether it's graphics, PowerPoint presentations, videos, and things like that, where students now critique each other's work, and you pair them into groups, and they exchange feedback and critique each other. Now, what's important about this is that teachers usually forget to help students on the critiquing part, right? And sometimes, students don't know how to critique. They've never been asked before to critique someone else's work in front of a classroom. And then what happens is students will say, "Oh, I agree, I agree." They never really give valuable feedback to the students because they've never been taught on how to give valuable feedback before. And so peer assessment is crucial. Teaching students how to give good feedback is crucial if you are going to use peer assessment. So here are some examples for peer assessment. You can tell your students, you can give them 3 criteria for the rubric, right? You can say to them, now these are examples, these are not set in stone. You can make these, you can change these and make them your own. You can say, for example, what did you learn or what did you admire from the other student? What will you do differently? And what advice would you offer? Right? So if you at least give the students some criteria so that you level the playing field across the board, and also that they have an idea, a starting ground. So it's not always the same. And so sometimes when I hear from faculty or teachers, they say to me, well, I did the discussions, and I'm tired of seeing students just say, when I'm asking them to critique or give feedback to each other, say, oh, I agree, I like what you did. So students are sometimes afraid to offer some critique because they're not shown how to express that critique without hurting someone else's feelings. So that's important for you to do, right? Anyone want to jump in on that?
I would love to. In my public speaking course, I really do a whole discussion first about kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And that the older I get, the more that I think kindness is the unique ability, and so that do unto others as you would do as you would have them do unto you. So therefore, always start with something positive. And then
Right.
you mentioned Jose using the word critique, and I say we're using the word critique and not being critical.
Right.
So that the person isn't deflated. What we want is that, okay, I liked this and I like this, and I'd like to see a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that. And we discuss, those categories. But this idea of the word critique rather than we are going to be critical of one another. No, we all
Right.
came into this course with a certain ability. You've been on this planet for how many years, and you know how to communicate. We're just going to make it a little bit more concrete in different ways and shapes and forms. But basically, you're not there to. We're there to help each other get to the next level.
Right. In my international management class, we use the term constructive feedback.
Exactly.
And that encourages them. And I say, how would you help strengthen, their presentation? So state it in the positive.
Oh, that's a great way of phrasing. I'm going to write that down.
This is great. I love the feedback. We're getting a lot of good feedback. Thanks, Christine, for that. That's really valuable.
I have one also. If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
In terms of the discussions, to sort of say, how would you continue the conversation by, maybe asking a question. So because what would you do differently or something seems like it could be just like something completely added on from outside of what the person had said. But if you ask them a question, about the material, then it's very firmly rooted in what they've already written. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you? And I find with some students, they can give like extremely constructive advice for further areas to look at by asking a question. As though it's a conversation, you're trying to carry on a good conversation at a cocktail party or something.
Yeah, and it's funny that I found that when you ask students for advice, it's more like you're kind of getting students to also give you some of that critique in a way that they feel like they're helping you in some way. So that's also another way that I'm using keywords like I think Christine mentioned, choosing the words correctly can also make a big impact on how you design the rubric or the criteria for a peer-to-peer assessment.
Also, at the end of each unit that I teach, instead of asking how can a teacher improve the instruction, is I encourage the students, how could you contribute to improving the instruction? So it forces the students to
good
think
one.
about their own contribution. Yeah.
I like that. Turning the tables on them.
Yes, yes.
Flipping the classroom.
They're in charge of their own learning.
The last, okay, so that's the fourth. That was the fourth. Oh, does someone else have a question or a comment they want to have? No?
Eileen has a question, I think.
Oh, Eileen.
Her hand is.
Sorry. Oh, you're in outer space.
Uh-oh, some echo there, Eileen.
Okay, what's the issue here?
There you go. I fixed it. Eileen, you were there 2 times. That's why you had some echo. So I just kind of removed. I removed the second. I removed the duplicate Eileen.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, these are all great suggestions. I'm just curious how to do this more for studio type classes. Like even with the videos, we're been encouraged, and good teaching practice means we chunk the videos into small sections. So if I were to try this, which I'd like to, because I got a lot of great videos, and how do they remember what they've seen and apply it once they're in the classroom? And my other question is, it's not clear to me that do the students have an option to be remote, or it's just the international students, or what? And our fashion design classrooms, we have no computers in them, in the apparel ones. So yeah, I'm just curious how this all works.
Can I just add what I know about that? Because I'm on this committee for reopening, and as far as I understand, students do not have the option to be remote unless they have an accommodation or they have some visa issue preventing them from getting to campus. Now, there are some courses where the faculty member has an accommodation, and I think some of those courses are being transitioned to remote at that point. But that's all I've heard. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
Yes, our students have been trying to get into online classes, for those. So it is up to the faculty member. If the faculty wants to accommodate the student, then they can.
To
but
get into
they're required to be in campus.
Right. Yeah, that's
so
right.
International students as well, they can travel?
Yeah. If they cannot get a visa, then they should try to come with some arrangement with a faculty member.
But then that becomes twice as much work for the faculty member if you are going into the classroom and teaching, and
Right.
or
The discussion outside.
not
of
that I
those
wouldn't do it, but
yeah.
I think that there is that point.
I've heard that concern, but
agree.
I know those are few and far between is what I've heard. So yeah, and anyway, it's a side topic and we can talk more some other
Yeah,
time.
it's actually a big problem for ITM, but I agree it's outside of this course. Yeah.
But if I could just speak to that studio question, Jose, I'm just going back to my grad school experience. I know a lot of you have heard me complain about my graduate school, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and how I took Photoshop online. I'm sorry, not online, in the classroom. And really all of those lectures consisted of us huddling around the professor's computer, watching every little move he did in Photoshop. And I would be so stressed trying to write down everything he was doing. And if he had used the flipped approach, he would have provided a video overview that could be watched on our own time, and I would have watched it over and over again, and I would have taken notes, and then come to class ready to do our own work and interact with the instructor with Q&A and interact with the classmates. So I think a lot of these studio classes can, you know, it's just a practical approach. If you can demonstrate something for students to master before they come to class, even if they don't get it all, you know, if they take some notes, I think that may be really helpful as you're trying to work with them in class. And also some students will, if your videos are on YouTube, you can tell students to pull up the video right there. And I bet a lot of students will have your video handy. So, you know, that's just one thought in terms of especially those demos. I think that I've heard faculty mention just how helpful it is to have those demos pulled together ahead of time. And those are demos that take a lot of work to create, but you will be able to use them class after class. So it's also a good investment, I think.
Yeah, another thing to add, to piggyback to what Tammy said for studio classes, it's very important to check in with the students. And Christine, we worked a little bit on adding questions to your videos. So what you can do for studio type classes, like in Tammy's example on Photoshop, if you're teaching, for example, let's say layering, and you want the students, before moving on to the next topic, what's called interactive videos, you can add, you know, this, for example, play, pause it, you know, they give you a free account. You can add questions and put them at certain points during the video, you know, where you can ask the students questions on key points or key takeaways at that point at the video. So that's another way that you can help them remember, and you know, so I mean, these are extra steps that you can do if you're interested. I can always, you know, sit down with me one-on-one. I can show you how you can add these interactive quizzes into your video, so that students, as they watch the videos on their own time, these questions will help them remember those key takeaways.
Is this on Screencast-O-Matic?
Not on Screencast-O-Matic. This will be a separate tool. I mean, there's a lot of free tools that will do this for you. I don't want to go too deep into that, but we can sit down, Patricia. I can show you some free tools out there that will allow you to take a YouTube video and add questions in key points of the video.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure. Now, the fourth technique I want to share with you all is called the Goldfish Technique. This is a fun one. I like this one a lot because listening is a difficult skill for students to learn at times. And so what the Goldfish Technique does is you split the class into two groups. Right? And so there's the inner group, and the inner group is the group that is going to sit, and again, you can play around with depending on your classroom and how your tables are set. You can have an inner circle and then have an outer circle, or have students stand around the inner circle. And so basically what happens is that the inner circle is the only people that can speak about the task that you have set before them. The outer group are there to observe and take notes of the inner group. And so basically what you're doing is, and you can be strategic about this, because if you have those students who are always jumping the gun and, you know, they're not good listeners, you can have those students as the outer group, and those students who are not the big time speakers in the classroom, put those in the inner group and switch the tables around. And so now you're forcing those students who are lacking listening abilities, you know, they're not good at paying attention, listening, forcing those students to listen to the inner group and take notes and observe how they are tackling the issue. And so what you're doing is you are, because sometimes it's hard for you to step away from the problem and see your mistake, because if you have those students, the students who are discussing the problem, it's hard for you to step back and look at the mistakes you're doing. So that's what the outer group is really doing. They're observing. and they're detached from the task. They're observing, and so they can see where the mistakes are happening. And that's really the secret sauce to that technique. Um, it encourages observation, it encourages reflection, and then most importantly, listening skills. And so it's hard for sometimes for students to stay quiet and listen and observe. So you might be torturing some people, but then you're also forcing those students in the inner group to talk and listen. And then what you do after the goldfish technique is over, then you can have them all come together and talk about, how the outer group, what did the outer group observe? What did I see? Well, the dynamic of the team dynamic within the inner group. And so they can then say, well, I was really able to see what you guys were talking about because I detached myself from the problem. And that's really the goal of the goldfish technique. Anyone want to jump into that one?
Can you give us an example?
Yeah. I mean, you can throw in a topic. Let's say you're teaching a history class into the mix, and you have the inner group talk about, what did they think about the Vietnam War, and was it a rifle war? What did you think, and was it the U.S. place to be involved in the war? And so you have them discuss, and then the outer group, as is observing the inner group talk about, well, I feel this, I feel that, and so as they're discussing, you have. It's important for the outer group to have their paper and pen ready to take notes as they're observing. And the outer group cannot jump in. They can't disrupt the conversation. They're just there to observe and to listen, to take notes. And then so once you have in a good amount of time, you feel that they covered the topic in good detail, and then you break up the inner circle and the outer circle, you bring them together. And then you have the outer group talk about, hey, what did you observe? What did you see what was working well for them, and what did you learn from the inner group as they were talking and discussing? It could also be a task that they have to solve, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a discussion. You can, again, these activities are here for you to mold them into you make them your own. And so, I don't know if that was a good example, Patricia.
It's a great example.
How many people would you put in the inner group?
That's a great question. Yes, so right. So now you have to.
You don't want someone to just be silent.
Yes. So that's again, you have to, and to encourage an icebreaker that I recommend everyone doing is usually icebreakers are set just to get the students used to the technology, but if you use an icebreaker strategically to create your student profiles, so that you have a profile for each one of your students based on an icebreaker, you can take that student profile for future use in an activity such as this, at the goldfish activity, because now you're building your student profiles, and you know which students are the ones that belong in the inner group and which students belong in the outer group. According to size, that's a very important question, right? Because you don't want it to be quiet. You want it to be the conversation to flow, or the task to be completed, and you don't want the students to fail and not get anything out of it. So the only reason why I mentioned student profiles is because it's a great way for you to know which students to put for future activities and assignments that you're planning on doing. A student profile will help you know which students will be best in which situation. But a good number would be probably, if you have 19 students, you might want to have, if you don't want to break it even, you might want to make it the inner group a little larger than the outer group. You can do that, or vice versa, depending on your student profiles and who are your students. So you could use that to your advantage as you strategize this activity in your classroom.
So you are in control of who goes into inner and outer.
Exactly.
Supposing you have the whole group choose which group they want to be in.
Oh, so you see, now you're getting fancy there, Patricia. But this is the beauty of it. You make it your own, right? So you might add another element to this activity where you have your students decide, I don't know if you're going to tell them what the inner group does and the outer group does. You might leave it as a surprise, or you might tell them exactly what they're going to be doing if they choose to be the inner group or the outer group. And this is where you build upon the activity.
Because I'm just thinking, if you have somebody who is very verbal and they're taking over the whole inner group, do you want to have control of that person being in the outer group? So the more reticent people have to be more interactive in the inner group.
Right.
Yes?
Or you might mix it up. You might have one person who you in your student profile sheets shows you that this person is a talker, right? And then you might have mix it in with 6 students who are relatively quiet students, and you see how the dynamic works out. So, you know, it's something for you to experiment. As the semester goes on, you might want to try this assignment several times, and you see how the dynamic works amongst your students, and you know which student is carrying the group. But then again, you also want to teach those students who are heavy talkers on how to listen and take notes on these other students. So it's carefully. You have to be careful with this, because you don't want it to be a dead conversation from the inner group and just the outer group is waiting to hear any good, anything to observe. There's nothing to observe. So you have to be very careful and strategic on how you decide who to put in the inner circle and who to put in the outer circle. And that's why I recommended the student profiles. I love having student profiles from day one, from the icebreaker. You know, have some questions that are going to help you, even on a Padlet. You can have the icebreaker on a Padlet. Have your students submit all their answers to your icebreaker. Turn that Padlet into a PDF, and you have your student profile on a PDF with their names, with their faces, photos, their image, everything in there. And so you can easily identify your students on a student profile. How much time do I have? I want to leave some time. Oops, I'm running out of time. But the last activity I wanted to share was if you were to gamify your course. And once the student has watched your video and they come back to the classroom and you want to make it a little bit more fun, collaborative effort, you can always gamify your course by creating a game based on the lecture that they were supposed to watch on your own time. So an example of a game, and I don't know if Lorenza, you're in the room, I'm not sure, Lorenza Wong. I've worked with Lorenza Wong on several games for her course, and we had a good amount of success with the students. One of the games that we created was a FIT textile caper, where there was a thief at FIT who stole swatches, and the students were supposed to work in groups to identify who this thief was. And so a game like this you can do this in the classroom, and students have to go through the swatches and figure out who is the thief. Another game that we did with Lorenzo, Professor Wong's course, we did a Lady Gaga world tour, where students are competing in groups for a position as Lady Gaga's fashion designer or fashion stylist for her tour, her world tour. And students are competing in groups to earn the job as Lady Gaga's fashion stylist. And this we created very easily on Google Form and Google Slides, with a bunch of questions where students have to answer the questions, and the winning team gets the job. Another game that I'm working on is based on the Among Us, which what you do is a discussion base where you have your students you form one big group, but within the group there are 3 students who are there to ruin the mission for the whole group. And so as the whole group is trying to solve this puzzle, in this case in this example it's a math game, and so as the students are completing the tasks, they gotta go through this map and complete all the 12 tasks. But among the group, there are 3 students who are trying to spoil the mission for the whole group. And so students, after every task or every question, students have to vote on who they think is the sabotager in the group, and so students then have to vote and say, well, I think Tommy is the one that's trying to, sabotage our mission. And then so you'll have one less person in the group as you go forward, as you continue the mission. And so these are ways to make the class time much more fun and interactive, and allow students to then all participate equally, as not just having the same 3 or 4 students at all classes participating, and everyone else is quiet. Any ideas or comments?
Is there a workshop or something on making these kinds of games or instructions somewhere?
Yeah, I just had one. I just had a gamification workshop early summer, but I'm gonna bring it up again sometime soon. I don't know yet.
Are there videos? I mean, did you record it?
Oh yeah. I have the first one recorded, the first workshop on gamifying your course.
Okay.
And I talked about these 3 games that we created: Lady Gaga's fashion tour and the FIT textile caper. But if you're not into making your own game, you can always go to Kahoot, which is a free. You can create your own games on Kahoot and then invite your students that way. But yeah, I'll definitely do another workshop on gamifying your course. Okay. I think I ran over my time. Anybody, any comments or questions or ideas we want to share before we close? Yeah, a lot of great ideas.
Thank you. So just send me your Calendly, because the one that I got says you're available first on August 18th.
Oh, definitely. Okay, Christine, I'll send you.
Thank you.
Oh, look, Lorenza, you were here. You didn't say anything. Lorenza Wong, of course, she's.
I didn't want it to disturb you. Hearing from you, from you.
You were hiding. You were hiding in there.
No, I'm not. I'm listening, but I'd rather listen to everyone.
You want to talk a little bit, Lorenza, about the games?
Oh, well, I mean, I think the thing is, it's brainstorming with Jose. You always have to come up with all the questions. And once the questions are built, we tried to make it easy by doing multiple choice, because we were asking the students, since it's remote, they have to type it in. So I think we've learned from the activity that it was best to do a multiple choice. But then it was easier from my point of view to write the questions because of the topic. But by brainstorming with you, you were able to help me with the escape room idea or the whole storyline besides, because we wanted to make it fun for the students. So.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun working with you, and I really enjoyed watching the students. It was a lot of fun watching the students, work together, and it was definitely a different vibe than a normal classroom, which I found very interesting.
But remember, we're going to do this live this semester. Okay, so you're coming in.
This is done during class? Sorry.
We're going to launch this in class live.
The game is conducted during class or at home?
Yeah, we're gonna, in the remote teaching, we were doing it, students were at home, but this semester we're gonna try to do it in the classroom. And we're gonna have either Professor Wong, she's either gonna have it on the projector, or the students can also have their laptops. If they want to bring their laptop, they can play from the laptop. So this is our first time doing it in the classroom, which I'm excited about. And we'll see how that turns out. But it was really a lot of fun in the remote teaching, as everyone was at home, and all the students had their webcams on, and working together in groups to solve this riddle, or solve the caper.
Jose, do you have that video? Do you have anything video that's related to the monitor in the classroom setting on your live online training session, please?
I'm sorry, Regina. You mean for the gamification?
Is that what it's called? Because remember, there was, I went in, I have participated in one of the gatherings with the monitor, it's a 65-inch monitor. Do you have any links related to that? How to utilize a monitor in the classroom?
Oh, I haven't done a workshop on that. You're referring to now as we're going back into the classroom, the new technology with the cards.
Yes.
Is that what you?
But
Yeah.
remember, there's a whole like a 65-inch monitor screen with the auto voice and movement detection, and we were testing it out.
Yes, I'm not training on that. That's gonna come from the IT department, and I think Rick Orr is the person in charge for that technology. I wasn't involved, and I don't think I will be involved in the training of that technology.
Because what I liked about it is that especially for the students who are going to be remote, and when the class sets, we can actually record the session. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that if you email Rick Orr, he'll probably give you a better answer than I can on that, and I'm sure they're going to have training for that. If you decide to use that technology, they're really going to be training from Rick Orr's team.
Yes, I would love to use that technology. Yes, thank you.
Definitely. Thank you for the question, Regina. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you all for joining in. I'm so happy to see everyone back, and so it's great to see all the happy faces, and I miss you all. So I will be doing this workshop again, I think Thursday?
Thursday at 11.
Thursday 11. Thank you.
Can I come back?
Of course, everyone's welcome back. Yeah, one thing I found
out different people will offer different ideas, and that's kind of fun.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say, Patricia. I've noticed that even though we, no, thank you for saying that, because we had the idea, hey, let's do this twice because some people might not make it at different times or whatever. But you're right. I've noticed that as we do these, they're never the same.
Which is nice. Yeah.
They're always different, so it's always fun. So if you're free, come back. And then we also have one more workshop before we're done. We're going to have the last one, which is one of my favorites, and I welcome all to come. It's going to be on August 3rd at 11, August 3rd and August 5th at 11 a.m., which is digital storytelling assignments with Adobe Spark. And that I promise you that was going to be a really fun one. So feel free to come to that if you're also available. If not, it's okay. These are all going to be recorded, and we'll put them on our website, or they will be on our YouTube channel, our FIT Online Learning YouTube channel. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate all the feedback. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you all for being such a great group, and we'll keep talking.
Thank you for being you.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.